Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of D2C Chronicles. Today we have with us Sailesh Hota, who is your go to person if you're in doubt in regard to the field of HR and consulting. We assure you that you will return with a smile. This XLRI Jamshedpur graduate is a stand up comedian who believes his unique skill set proved to be helpful in grabbing the attention of recruiters. Let us hear the interesting journey of Sailesh that he has had from being a stand up comedian to currently being employed as a senior analyst with Everest Group. Hi, Sailesh. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. How have you been doing during this lockdown?
Hi, Alina. Really glad to be a part of this. And regarding the lockdown, I think I'm doing as much, as everyone else, I guess, struggling to figure out how to work as well as pretend like I still have a social life in the midst of this entire pandemic. So, yeah, um, work's been crazy, working from home, like joining, onboarding from home, starting work, learning work. It's been quite the roller coaster ride so far, at least.
Absolutely. I think we're all in the same boat, trying to sail through the pandemic as much as we can, trying to learn a few skill sets here and there.
True.
Apart from your comedy skills, what new skill sets have you learned during the pandemic?
So I kind of went back to some of the things that I used to do. So I have been writing since like I was 10, 11. So that stopped for a little bit when I was in Excel, because of the crazy schedule and obviously uh, all the work and the assignments and everything. So I got time to go back to that. Started writing, thought I'll restart my blog, which had, not seen a single word for the past 3 years at least. And kind of started singing a little. I'm not that great, but I thought everyone was doing something. I kind of had a slight fear of missing out that I should also learn something. So yeah, exploring a couple of things. Let's see.
Sounds interesting. I think we're all trying to pick up a few skills. I too started, actually restarted reading. I love reading, but again, I did not get that time to pick up the books that I always wanted to read. Now, moving
No,
forward, Salesh, before we kickstart this session, I would really like you to introduce yourself to our listeners in your style. I would like you to make them familiar with the other side of your story, that is the one that makes people smile.
so my name is Sailesh, and it's actually Sailesh Hota. And having such a unique surname has not made life easy for me so far, to be honest. uh, there's not been a single joke that has not been made on my surname so far, to be honest. I think I've heard it all. And uh, I am your typical small town guy. I come from Bhubaneswar, which is the capital of Odisha, and I did my entire schooling here. So after that, I decided it was time to spread my wings and see more of the world. So I went to another small town, which was Trichy, and I did my graduation in electrical engineering from NIT Trichy. After that is where I actually kind of figured that okay, I don't want to get into academics, and I did everything else apart from study during my undergrad. Thankfully, though, my recruiters were kind enough, and I got a job despite my abysmal grades. And I worked in the semiconductor space for 2.5 years. Uh, in Hyderabad, I was working for a company called Cavium, which was a processor manufacturing company. So I was a firmware engineer there, and that was when I kind of got into the entire comedy thing. I just randomly one day saw a flyer and I went for an open mic, and then that kind of changed things completely. And after that, I thought, yes, so I have successfully disappointed my parents so many times by not taking up UPSC or not pursuing engineering services job. So I thought I should disappoint them a little more, and I decided to do an MBA like every other engineering graduate in India, and that's how I landed in Excel, very unexpectedly. And yeah, that's been my short story so far.
That is pretty interesting and unlike many other stories that I've heard recently. Now, Salish, your story and your experience of stand-up comedy is not only intriguing, but is also one of a kind. Believe me when I say this, I haven't really come across many B-schoolers who have the art of making people smile. Now, on this note, why did you not go and pursue comedy full time? And why did you join a B school and then are working as a consultant?
Well, the short answer is that I wasn't really good at it. So if I was, obviously, I wouldn't have gone for an MBA. But jokes apart, uh, it's really very difficult. I mean, it takes a lot of time to develop any art form. And if you look at all the successful people on scene right now, somebody like a Biswa Kalyan Rath or Abhishek Upmanyu, they have been, perfecting their art for almost close to a decade now. And 2017 was kind of the year when stand-up was slowly starting to take up, like it was slowly starting to fly. And as a open micer in a major city, I did get the chance to interact with some of the people back then. Some of the names which are very big right now, like Abhishek Upmanyu and let's say Akash Gupta. And we used to talk to them post show that, okay, sir, I'm a open micer. I'm trying to get into the comedy scene. What should I do? What should be the way forward? And almost all of them back then told me only one thing, that do not, if you have a job, if you have a steady job, do not give that up to pursue comedy, because it's very tough. It's very it's a lot of struggle ahead, right? Because I mean, to have that 1 hour worth of jokes, it takes years and years of comedy writing and open mics and thousands of hours of self-loathing and pity to actually perfect your skill. And for the 1 year that I actually did open mics very religiously and managed to get into some shows also, I hardly came up with like 15 minutes of good material, right? So it just goes to show that there's a lot of effort that needs to get into it. And if you do not have your career sorted in the meantime, if you do not have something to fall back on, it's kind of difficult to pursue that, especially someone like me who, there are a lot of people out there who can't really fall back on their family, who really need to keep some source of income to keep going and then pursue their hobbies and their passions side by side, right? So that was kind of the logic which came into my mind. So I quit my job in October 2017 very impulsively. I was getting I figured out that I didn't want to sit in front of a system and write code for the rest of my life. And I thought I'll take 6 months to see how it goes. Full-time comedy, will it be worth it? And also, um, I talked to a lot of uh, people at that time, my seniors from college and all, to figure out, okay, how does MBA work? What's the field like? Because there are a lot of people out there who follow CAT very religiously, who know how things work, and I was definitely not one of them. So after talking to my seniors, I figured that, okay, it's kind of getting a little late for me to do an MBA. So if I intend to do it, I should do it this year. And so yeah, those 6 months were kind of a transitionary period, and like I said, very impulsive decision. So CAT wasn't really going to be my shot. So I was targeting like, okay, let's see what's left. And that was there, GMAT was there, and yeah, so I just ended up in Excel after that. And the logic behind that, which I've talked about before also, is that I see stand up as something I want to be doing, even 10 years after now. So I am completely fine if I become a decent stand up comedian at the age of 40 also. There's no hurry. I want to take my time. And in the meanwhile, I need a need a source of income, obviously, something, and not just any job. I want to do a job which I like and which I enjoy as well, because you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, be it your passion or be it your job or be it your career, it has to be of your liking. Otherwise, you just feel out of place for 10 hours, 12 hours a day, which kind of was happening to me earlier when I was working after my undergrad. So yeah, that was the logic behind choosing for an MBA right now and then kind of putting comedy as a milestone after a decade. Like, okay, let me work towards that as the next avenue. So yeah.
That is quite an interesting story. And in the slide, I would like to say that everything you do adds up in the end. And this is what makes you you, and this is what makes you different.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think that your experience in comedy has helped you in your MBA journey? And before you answer that, I would also like you to shed some light on how your MBA entrance interview went, because I'm sure it must have been very different and very unique for that
Yeah, it was actually. So I kind of I wrote an article or two about that particular experience, and also did another interview about my interview experience a couple of years ago when I entered Excel. And to be honest, it was very different. So I think I think what I would like to start off with was the the takeaway from comedy as a whole. And it was a very illuminating and very liberating experience, to be honest. And the rationale behind starting comedy was to actually kind of get out of the social anxiety that I had. Like I said, I have been writing for some time, and I used to do drama and stage plays since like school, on and off again. College, maybe once I went to college, I picked up some drama and some stuff there. Uh, so every time I was on stage, I was fine, I was happy. But if you put me in a situation like a college fest or a tech fest or something where there's like 1,000, 1,200 people around me, so I kind of panicked a little every time. And I thought, that's usually because you are amongst an unknown crowd. Like, when you're performing in front of your college mates, your batchmates, that's different. But when you are among people you don't know, okay, you might behave differently, which was happening with me. So that was why I got into comedy. Actually, I wanted to get over that fear. And obviously, everyone thinks they're funny till they actually go on stage and tell jokes. So once that happened, I realized that I wasn't that funny, obviously. And there's been so many times, there were very very good days where you get a paid open mic and people have shelled up some 200, 300 rupees to watch a couple of newbies, and somehow you kill it. And then there were days where people didn't even throw a pity smile at me. So absolute silence after like 7, 8 minutes worth of jokes. So one thing I realized when I was doing that was, no matter whenever I was having a bad day on stage, I never felt bad after that. Like, that rejection was very liberating. I was very thankful for that, moment of failure. I was getting used to the idea that yes, it is okay to be bad at something, because one day if you keep trying at it, you'll get good, right? And also, being a part of that circuit opens you up to meeting so many new people. You have so many people, so many variety of people across age, across profession. And uh, let's say there's some 50 people in the audience, maybe two people will stay back to talk to you. Maybe a month later, five people will stay back and talk to you because they've been seeing you for some time now. And that kind of opens you up to a lot of new experiences, and you get to learn about the things that are out there in terms of profession, in terms of people, in terms of ideas, and so many things. And so yeah, it was really good. And I got over, at least like the biggest thing that helped me from comedy was that my fear of failure went away. So when I ended up in my Excel interview, it was very unexpected, because as I was just about to sit down, in front of my panel, they asked me, so you're an engineer, and kind of like a response to stimulus, I just blurted out no. So it was very involuntary. I don't know. I still don't know why I said that. And I was just about to sit down when they looked up at me, and I just froze there. And they're like, "What do you mean you're not an engineer? Your degree says that you're a bachelor of technology." I was like, "Yes, sir. Can I please sit down before I answer that question?" Sure. So I told them that I meant to say that I'm not working as an engineer anymore. Yes, I am an engineering graduate, but my job is not of an engineer anymore. Then they're like, what do you do then? So I was like, sir, I gave up my job to kind of pursue stand-up comedy, and then it started. Like, I think I was one of the last people in my panel to go in. So everyone before me had like 15 to 20 minutes of interview, and mine kind of went on for like 30-35 minutes. So they completely dissected the entire stand-up comedy as an industry. Like, what's the earning like, what's the model like, how do people make money, how much do you make, how much do you think they make, what's the industry size. I mean, it went from a general knowledge session to a business session. Like, okay, what's the future of the industry? Why do you think this industry is taking up, as compared to other art forms? So 20-25 minutes went about stand-up, and it felt like they were not very convinced with every answer that I was giving, and that so yeah, it was very pressurizing in that moment, and but yeah, I mean, I converted Excel, so obviously it went well according to the professors. And when so one of the panelists actually was the professor of industrial relations during my first term. So I went up to him at the end of first term when our last class happened, and I asked him, "Sir, do you remember me from the Bangalore interview?" So he's like, "No, I know you from class, but which Bangalore panel were you a part of?" So I told him, "Sir, I was that guy who left his job to pursue stand-up comedy." And my professor just froze for 2 seconds. He's like, "You were that guy? Seriously, you were that guy?" I was like, "Yeah." So then he asked, like, "Are you still doing it in Jamshedpur?" I was like, "No, no time and all." Then he's like, "You should, because that is the one thing which helped you get into Excel at least. So don't stop." I was like, "Sure." And yeah, it helped, definitely helped.
So, how seriously have you taken that professor's advice, and how are you still pursuing comedy?
Uh, Not really. I mean, like I said, the B school schedules kind of tend to get a little crazy, and also, the city you are in, the kind of scene they have when it comes to open mics, that also matters a lot. So I managed to do 2-3 open mics, which had happened inside college in the first year, but then after summers it becomes little crazy, right? Your second year is very short, and then you have to do so many things like you have to prepare for your electives, you have to prepare for your placements, you have to work for your committee, you have to do a lot of things. And uh, second year it kind of got away from me in the second year. So then I decided, okay, right now I'm more focused on the writing part, because as much as the delivery is important, writing is also a huge part of it. The way you structure a joke, the way you approach a thought. So I'm focusing on the writing part right now. Like, I've been out of touch with writing for so long. I thought, okay, let me focus on that, and then maybe I can take the next step after some time. So yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds pretty good. Um, and it's good to say that you are actually working on it, even though it is not that much. We hope to see a good comedian coming up from you in the coming few years.
Hopefully.
On this slide, I would also like to say that I think the landscape of open mic and stand-up comedy is going to change in the coming years, especially because of the pandemic, as we previously mentioned and discussed
Yeah.
also. So I think what happens happens for the good. If you are here, I think it was meant to be this way.
like I keep saying to everyone, I love this term, K Sera Sera. So yeah, I guess yes, what will be will be. I mean, I see a lot of my peers from back then, who continued to be in the scene, who kept doing open mics after, along with their jobs and all. And they have shifted to, open mics on Zoom. They're doing shows for remote audiences from the comfort of their home. The experience is completely different, obviously, from a physical show, and it's interesting to see how that will develop, how that will pan out. Because right now it's more of a temporary, because people are still in that, okay, it's a temporary thing. But if you look at some of the larger comedians out there, some of them have actually started doing international shows right now from home. So if that actually works out and it becomes sustainable, then yes, the industry might undergo a very big transformation in the days to come.
I think here is where OTT platforms come into the picture, like Netflix and Amazon. If they start supporting stand-up comedians, it might go a long way in giving leverage to the ones who are just blooming.
True, true. But then the sheer number of people also has become so big. Like I remember talking to Abhishek Upmanyu in 2017, and he just randomly told me, take a guess on how many open micers do you think are in Mumbai right now? And in Hyderabad, there were hardly 50. So I thought, okay, maybe 200 people. So he said, no, there are 500 plus people in Mumbai right now doing open mics. And that was 2017. And almost 3 years down the line, there have been so many new comics on the scene. Comedy has become, more, it has received way more recognition than it had in 2017. So yeah, it's I think that the scale of people alone was unprecedented. So yeah,
I think
that,
it is getting lot more limelight because of the pandemic also. Because we have been looking up to entertaining mediums for a very long time now, since we have been stuck in the pandemic at our own places. We're all looking up to new sources of entertainment, and that is where comedy and art forms all have pitched in some way or the other. Now, Sailesh, your journey sparks the universal debate of choosing between one's passion and profession. On this note, what advice would you like to give to students, to our viewers especially, who are currently in a similar predicament?
well, that's a tough question, to be very honest. And I think one very important thing is to assess your priorities and where you stand in life. uh, See, I am a firm believer of pursuing your passion. Even the 2 years, not even the 1.5 years that I spent at Excel, uh, I spent, like, most of my recognition came from my time with the drama team. I was the script writer for a long time. I used to act with them. We did a lot of shows. We had a great team. We managed to win a couple of competitions, and all professors that know me right now know me because of that. They don't know me because of my academics, obviously. And going forward, also, there was a co-curricular committee I was a part of, and industrial relations and labor law kind of became like a very big area of interest for me. So I kind of pursued that also very religiously. Like, I was a part of the industrial relation committee. I was pursuing. I took up a lot of law subjects during my 2 years, and that also helped me establish an identity, right? But it was not like I was only doing this. Like, I also had to pay attention to some acads. Like, I needed to keep a decent grade, at least a passing grade, so that I can graduate. And you have to attend classes. You have to, participate in discussions. So I think both go hand in hand. It's less about choosing one over the other, so that you are not left with any regrets at all. So for me personally, I believe that yes, you should be able to do both till your passion becomes, significant enough, or you become talented enough in your field to pursue it full time. Till then, if you think that stability or uh, academics can take a back seat, I don't think so, because a lot of credibility, like people also listen to you based on how credible you are, right? Your credentials matter at some point. So I believe yes, it should be a mixture of both. It should not be a very hard choice.
Very rightly said. Especially, I agree with the last part where you said that your credentials matter a lot when they're looking at you, when they're hearing you speak on stage. That is, I think, because they found you credible for that position, and that is why they've come to watch you on stage, to hear you.
Yeah, I mean, credentials
So,
also, one more thing I would like to point out just to people listening to this, like credentials should not mean your degree or your qualification, right? Credentials cover everything. It's the kind of experiences you have, right? I mean, if you look at someone like Atul Khatri, you would know that he has his own business, he has his own company. Same with Amit Tandon. They are great comics, but they also talk about what they have done in life, and you have that respect for them, right? Look at Biswa. He was an IITian who did not go into the. He went into graphics design after college. Then he kind of randomly started comedy. There are a lot of people like that, and yeah. So that when I talk about credentials, I mean the kind of experiences and the kind of exposure you get, or you manage to get in whatever capacity you are doing. So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up so that people think that okay, no, getting a master's is important or something. It's not like that.
very rightly said. I think it was very important for you to clarify when you talk about credentials because it has a very vast definition, the
True.
word credentials itself.
True.
Now, Sailesh, we know that establishing yourself in the field of comedy must not have been an easy feat for you. But your journey seems to be quite enlightening for our viewers. What did your experience with open mic comedy teach you about yourself? Also, do you recall any particular incident as a stand up comedian that made the path ahead easier?
Okay, it's going to be a very jumbled answer because so many things come to my mind when you say this. And yeah, definitely it was not an easy part at all. And it was more of a experimentation kind of phase back then, obviously. And like I pointed out earlier, I think the biggest takeaway for me was getting rid of my fear of failure. Like I was more acceptable to rejection after that, and especially coming from a small city where you kind of were focused on academics for a long time. Most of us have that thing. You get 80%, you are doing good in life, and then you get a decent college, so you haven't really faced like major failures. you know uh, some of us who have had a sheltered life. So it's very important to have that rejection or those repeated failures, so that when you actually enter a place like a B school where the competition is very high, because the 300 odd people who have come there along with you, they were obviously some of the best people in their peer groups. So when you look at CVs also, right, it's so similar at times that all of them did a lot of organizing events and all in their college. A lot of them have been student body representatives and all. So everyone has had those similar level of accomplishments, and that is why you all are there together. And then when an opportunity comes, and because all of you are almost on the same level, some of you will go through and some of you won't. So that accepting that rejection and understanding that those small setbacks in a B school are a part of life, that becomes very important. And comedy is that one thing which helped me go into that mode. Like I remember my summers. So on the day zero of placements, as we call, I had some 16 odd shortlists total from the morning, and my interview started in at 9 a.m. and I was getting rejected till midnight. So imagine getting rejected in like some 12, 13 interviews, and like 5, 6 of them were like final rounds also. And it was not an easy task. It takes a toll on anyone. And uh, I guess I did not break at any point because I was like, "ठीक है, something will happen." And I think, yeah, around 12:30 a.m. I got an offer. I was like, okay, I'm done. And yeah, so that is the most important learning I feel that comedy has given me. I mean, it was more of an experiences. It was more of a mixture of experiences from stand up. Uh, I would say the culmination of those experiences helped me, you know, get a clearer picture of what I wanted to do ahead. So every stand-up comedian would tell you that there is a great uh, feeling of excitement when you're doing comedy, and especially when you're telling a good joke. It is unlike any other kind of high that you have had, because imagine I fondly remember this one time where I got to perform in front of some 400 plus people in Bhubaneswar in a college. So we were 5 comedians who were doing a show for them for 1 hour. So like 10 to 15 minutes for everyone, and that was like the biggest crowd I had faced ever. And I remember walking up to stage, and there was this one joke I loved doing back then, and that was kind of like my secret weapon every time. Like, okay, this if I drop this, I knew that okay, it's going to be a good joke. It's going to be a good applause. So as I was building up the story, as I was approaching the punchline, so split second of silence when the story ends and the punchline is about to come, right? And that split second feels so long, and it feels so amazing to you as a person, because you know that right now the silence that's there, the absolute pin drop silence in the auditorium, it's not going to exist half a second later. Everyone is going to break into chaos, and that moment is, I can't put it into words. So yeah, and yeah, so that's one of my fondest memories, from then. And like I said, the culmination of experiences that I had was that I understood that I wanted to get into a job role or get into a career where it involved me being creative, it involved me talking to people, it involved me having the space to approach things the way I want to, right? And of course, you want a challenge in life, because even in something like stand up, you cannot approach every crowd the same way. Like one day there is a mix of college kids, maybe someday there's a lot of 40 plus age audience in the crowd. Someday there is a mix, let's say perfect mix of all kinds of demographics. And in that case, you really have to think very hard on stage itself, like, okay, should I deliver it this way or that way? If you're doing an improvisation, if you're interacting with the audience, how are you interacting, right? So you have to think on your feet a lot. So I kind of wanted to get into something which allowed me to do all this. And as I talked to my seniors and I looked up about MBA, as I educated myself about MBA, I figured that yes, something like a marketing or maybe an HR would be a good fit for me. And which is the reason I applied to Excel HR also. Like that was the only HR college I applied to. The rest were all your standard PGDM programs like ISB and IIMs and SPJN and all. But Excel HR, like okay, it's the best HR college in the country. Let's take a risk and the story.
That is an amazing story, and I believe that our viewers would also be awestruck when they will hear you speak about it, when they'll hear you talk about the moment on stage, that split second that you mentioned so vividly in front of all of us. Now, as we draw this discussion to a close, I would like you to talk about a few more aspects. We know that you were a stand up comedian and still back the role of a senior analyst. So, before we wind this discussion up, I would like you to shed some light on what do recruiters look for in potential candidates in their final placements, and how can a candidate possibly leverage his or her passion to pursue a professional career in an entirely different domain?
Yeah, I love talking about this, because most of my weekends ever since I went into Excel, uh, when the B school season starts, I get people approach me with a lot of questions, because I've been writing on a couple of platforms, so people ask me about this. And when you get into a B school, you have your juniors who ask you this also, right? And the one thing I tell them, not just from my example, I mean, there are so many of my friends also who have great passions. Like, there is a friend of mine, Yash, who loves football. And one of his interviews actually went completely on football. This was during summers. And they talked about football for like, I think, almost an hour. So that he had a great interview. So he got signed out before that, but I think he would have gotten an offer from that company as well. So the thing to keep in mind when you are sitting for placements is to find that one thing. It could be anything. It could be your passion. It could be something that you follow. uh, if you are able to engage the recruiter on a slightly different level or dimension as compared to others, then you are doing a good job. Because imagine, in a placement scenario where there are so many candidates, fighting for the same role and the same position as you, everyone is going to come and talk about their life so far and their achievements. And it's not, like I said earlier, it's not that different, right? Almost everyone had a bachelor's. A lot of them were engineers. If you look at the batch profile also, you'll see the profile skewed into some dimensions. And when that happens, people keep talking about similar things, that they have experienced in life. And when that happens, how well are you able to differentiate yourself among everyone else becomes very important. So that's why I had this one thing every time, like for the next 2 years, like as soon as I entered Excel, there was this one thing I kept in mind. Like, every time I was asked to introduce myself, I always used to end the last line of my introduction with, and I used to do stand-up comedy before coming to XLRI. That is always the last line of my introduction. It was like very 45-second, 60-second intro, and that was my last line. So invariably, it used to end up being that the next question would be, "Oh, that's interesting. Where did you perform? What did you do? How did you end up here?" So you already have the recruiter interested in you. You have got their attention, right? And then we start talking about what I did and why I came here and how that experience helped. And that happened even during Everest. So Everest was the first case interview I had during my B school journey. And one of the VPs from Everest group was on call with me for my case interview. And I did the same thing when we talked. I told him that I was doing stand-up comedy, and he's like, "Where?" I told him Hyderabad. So turned out he had lived in Hyderabad for some time. Then he's like, "Okay, where? Which place? Which club?" And then we talked about that for 3 minutes. And then the case that he gave me was about a comedy club. So they wanted me to do a revenue and cost analysis for the club, and they wanted to see my analysis on how I would, if he was an investor, how would I show him that okay, it's going to be a profitable venture. And then there was also guesstimate about the market size for stand-up comedy in a city like Hyderabad. So the assumptions that I took during that case interview was also based on the exposure that I had back then. Because I was getting involved not just doing comedy but also talking to people. Like the club I used to perform at, the guy who was running that club, I used to talk to him that, okay, how does the business happen? What kind of ticket sales do they see? So I pick up those information, those bits of information along the way. And I kind of used those to form my assumptions when I was solving that case. And I, again, when that case interview got over and I talked to the other people who had, gotten a shortlist and were having case interviews simultaneously along with me, a lot of them had 15-20 minute interviews. Mine went for some 35 minutes. So yeah, so that's very important. So you have to learn to differentiate yourself every time, no matter if it's a B school or anywhere going forward in any interview. If you have an unique talking point, if you have something that you're insanely crazy about, if you're insanely passionate about, talk about it. If the interviewer is intrigued by it, they will obviously ask you more. If not, they'll move forward. But then, you know putting forward these points show that you have that zeal to learn and you have that dedication towards things. So if you find something which you really like, and that comes in the context of a job as well. So if you enter a role and you really like it, the person interviewing you knows that, okay, he's going to give his 100% if he gets in and likes this, right? So they're more ready to take a gamble on you. So this is one thing. And the second thing, obviously, from a B school perspective for preparation, is that you have to work on your CV as much as you can. Like, people think at times that the B school tag is enough to get you through, that once you land in a college, life is pretty much sorted. But again, there's so many talented people, there are so many brilliant people around you, that you always have to keep striving to be a better version of yourself, even in terms of placement prep. So if you look at my CV from the summers and my CV for the finals, for the laterals, widely different. And I think I was much more confident also, when I sat down for laterals, when I was applying to companies, I was much more confident. I was much more structured in my approach. Uh, I did a lot of dissection. Like, you can't approach all firms or all roles the same way. If you are interested in a certain kind of role, make your CV align to that. Because every role demands a certain set of skills, a certain set of competencies, and you should make sure that your experiences kind of reflect that. If they're asking for leadership, communication, or on the spot thinking or something like that. If sometimes rewording a sentence create brings in so much importance, it creates so much difference. uh, it's conveying the same information, but the way you say it makes a lot of difference to the recruiter as well. Second year was that when applications started coming in, I was researching every company religiously before applying. What the role is, what do they do, and pay is something that you should avoid looking at, right? Because the role is more important. And if you talk to seniors, also, you have to build your CV according to your skill set, according to the skill set that the domain is looking for. And at times, so when I that one thing which I did very religiously in the second year was that when I sat down for laterals, I made sure that I was researching every company and every role very religiously. uh, and seniors keep telling you that, stop looking at the pay, stop looking at the CTC, and that's very true actually, because there have been people who have gone into FMCGs, consulting, etc., and they have gone into proper product roles. They have gone into great companies, but somehow they change or they switch very fast because they feel like the job isn't suited to them, or they at times find another job. So don't be afraid to do that. Research very well and and try to show interest to the recruiter. Don't just be another candidate that's being presented in front of them from the B school. Do some groundwork, show interest, try to know the company, try to know what the company does, and also do not be afraid to ask questions. That is one great advice that a friend of mine gave me, that the more questions, actually the better questions you ask in an interview, uh, because we always sit in interviews where the interviewer invariably asks at the end, do you have any questions for me? And we do not know what to do at that point, right? So it becomes important to ask good questions there, which shows that you are willing to learn and you are willing to take an informed decision. If the recruiter sees that you are not just being, you're not doing things mindlessly, and you're willing to take an informed decision when it comes to something as important as your career, then they know that they can trust you as an employee also, right? You're not just another part of the herd.
To summarize all the points that you just mentioned in the last few minutes, I'd like to list them for our viewers. Firstly, it is very important for you to have a unique story to tell the recruiter once they are on campus, looking for recruitment and potential candidates. Secondly, it's very crucial for you to work on your CV because that plays a very important part. And
Yeah.
thirdly, be very open to questions. Ask questions, as many questions that you would like to ask the recruiter, especially, and be sure that the questions that you ask the recruiter are well informed and are just not random questions. So I think those are some really very important advices that you have shared and very insightful advices. I am sure our viewers have a lot to take back from this video of yours. On a closing note, thank you so much, Sailesh. It was amazing talking to you. It was amazing knowing you and your interesting journey. We wish you the best for all your future endeavors. Stay safe, stay home, and take care.